All right, so let's progress on with part two of chapter two's analyzing the business case. So as we start talking about business cases as it pertains to IT projects, we start by focusing on, again, and I know you've heard me say this, the documentation. The documentation is going to give us a solid plan. We need to document even projects that we end up not taking on. So a good start to that, let me drag this over, a good start to that would be to look at the ISO, or International Organization for Standardization. Now, if you do some research, you'll find ISO is involved in everything, but the ISO 21500 is based in project management. So it is a standard set of best practices that have been designed to say, okay, this is what good project management is, this is what it produces, this is how we do it. And so you can pause and read through this. I'm going to go ahead and minimize it and get back to our slides. So the first thing, of course, is that systems request form. What is it we're looking for? So first of all, by having a form that is filled out consistently, we can assess one project against the other based on everything that the form contains. So we get that consistency. It's easy to understand. A lot of times these are submitted electronically. A lot of times we'll have IT systems or databases that we can put these in so that we can prioritize them, so that we can look at a cost-benefit analysis of doing project A over B, or maybe we need to do project C before we can do project A, because we need, say for example, an additional network infrastructure. So before we can work on streaming video twice a week, we need to have a network infrastructure that would support that. So that might be a subsequent project that needs to be done prior. So here's a little example of a systems request form. So what is it for? Is it a new system? Is it an enhancement to an existing system? Is there a bug that needs to be fixed? How quickly we need to fix this? You might also see this in IT departments when people go ahead and they submit requests for service. So it becomes a value prospect. What service needs to be done first? Well, the one that's affecting most people. So there's an idea. So systems review committee, again, we talked about this. This is no longer just the IT department deciding what work the IT department wants to do. This is now a committee made up of business decision leaders, upper management, lower management, may all the way be down to some end users who are deciding which projects need to be done first and how they benefit that company and its mission statement. So the other reason for a committee, of course, is with a committee, we do away with some of that bias. Again, when it was just the IT departments, honestly, I did this too. We would take on projects that were the coolest. We might take on projects in areas that we wanted to learn, not necessarily what benefited the company. So by having a committee of people making these decisions, we get rid of that bias in a lot of cases, and we as a group tend to keep each other sort of honest as to what projects best benefit the company. There, of course, are disadvantages too. We have to wait till the committee can meet. What if the committee can't make a decision, that benefits the company? Is it at a stalemate? That kind of thing. The committee itself might even favor projects depending on what they want to work on. So, and then of course, political differences, cultural differences within the company can impact as well. So is the proposal desirable in an operational sense? So is it practical approach to how to solve the problem we have, or maybe not even solve a problem we have, but increase something? So is it feasible? Of course, we've talked about that. Economically desirable, meaning does the project cost, is it exceeded by the savings? Is it exceeded by whatever we know is the additional income that can be generated by the project itself? So it can be very difficult to figure out what the total cost of ownership or return on investment of a project is when we talk about intangible factors. Intangible meaning, things that aren't directly factually measurable. So can we measure customer satisfaction? To a certain degree we can. But what about company image? Does this project or product or whatever we're doing, remember we can be thinking outside of IT. Does it increase the company's image? Do we look better to our customers? Do our customers then want to purchase more from us because we help in the community, for example? Can the proposal be accomplished within an acceptable time frame? So remember, time is a challenge. Most people want it done, yesterday. Well, when do you need this computer? Well, I really needed it yesterday when the other one broke, and I forgot to tell you yesterday that it broke. So I'm down today because I didn't tell you that I needed this resource yesterday. So here's a nice graphic of feasibility. We can look at the 4 key points of feasibility. So operational, will it be easy to learn and use? Are we building a system ourselves? Are we putting in an existing system? Is there existing training for the system? Those kind of things. Will it benefit exceed costs? Again, hugely important. But sometimes the benefit does not exceed the cost, but it's a federal or state regulation that we implement something. Healthcare, HIPAA, for example, has cost the healthcare industry hundreds of millions of dollars with the idea that we produce better healthcare from the HIPAA requirements. And HIPAA and IT, very challenging. Technical, so do we have the technical resources internally, or can we hire them out, or can we hire consultants that give us that technical expertise to do the project? And then the schedule, do we have time? We really have to think about, most of the time we've hired full-time people, they have a full-time job. Now suddenly we want them to spend 5 or 6 hours of their week involved in a project hoping it's going to make their job easier. A lot of people would just be rather, just let me go do my job, for example. So operational feasibility, does management support the project? It is imperative. Even if management doesn't understand a lick of the project, it is imperative that they're in those meetings, that they're letting the project team know, this is important to the company, here is why, you're making a difference, keep going with the project, spend more time on it, it is beneficial to our company, thus to you as an employee. So is the current system, well liked? Of course, if you're replacing an existing system, of course the current system is going to be better in the eyes of the end user. Why? Because the new system means change. It means learning something new. It means doing something different. And most people will say, oh yeah, I'm all about change, until change affects them. So keep that in mind. They're going to like the old system. Sometimes you're going to have to sell them on why the new system is going to make their job easier, more efficient, give them better data, make them a better employee. So, is there a workforce reduction? A lot of folks get really scared when we start automating processes. We've seen this for years. Just look around at assembly lines where we would have hundreds of people doing hundreds of different jobs. And now we have robots that are programmed by one employee, programs 15 stations, and they produce a car. So of course, people are going to be worried, is my job affected by this increase in technology? New system require training users. They know the old system. They don't necessarily want to learn the new system. So how much time is it going to take? Are we going to train people who then will train other end users? What's the cost in training? We pull everybody off the production floor for 3 days? What's the cost of the business? That's a project cost, folks. If we stop manufacturing so that we can retool or retrain employees, that's a cost to the new project. So will users be involved in planning the new system right from the start? Here's how we benefit. If end users don't like change and they like the old system, but you get some of them involved in creating the new system, they start taking ownership of the new system, and that ownership extends on to other end users who are saying, well, what's going on in the meeting? Where are you guys at? How is the project going? Oh, it's going great. Oh, it's going to be great. Oh, you're going to love it. It's going to help you do your job better. We can actually start marketing our projects within our company. So other feasibilities, so will any information be less accessible or produced less frequently? Well, certainly we would hope not. We would hope that new technology, faster processor, more memory, better servers, is going to allow us to produce more information much quicker, get it out to the decision makers who need to make decisions based on that data much more sooner. So that's the idea of we don't have to wait to the end of the day to get a printed report. We can go in and push a button and figure out how we're doing in production within the first 4 hours of production today. Will performance decline any? Sometimes performance does decline, especially as we implement a new software, for example. Users aren't used to using it. They're not going to work as efficiently until they learn and master the new system. So will customers experience adverse effects? Well, here's that idea. If Ben Broadband goes down because of a project, say they're implementing new technology that's going to make it faster and more reliable, but in the process, the system's going to be down for a day, yes, there's an impact to customers. Will any risk to the company's image, goodwill result? Here's a great example of this. And do legal or ethical issues need to be considered? All of these come in the form of security. So let me just ask you this. How many people were impacted by the Target hack? And how did that affect Target's goodwill towards its customers? How did it affect its image? Was there a legal aspect? Yes, Target ended up having to get credit protection and credit monitoring for a lot of the people that were affected by the hack when their credit cards, credit information, and personal information was stolen from Target's system. Target became responsible for that. And yes, it impacted the company a great deal. So technical feasibility. Does the company have the necessary hardware, software, network resources? Again, we may have to do a project to increase those network resources or technology resources that are needed in order to implement the system. What we used to do on a server 10 years ago and what we do on a server today are completely different. It used to be when we got a new software package that was going to run company-wide, it needed to be on its own server. Today, we would virtualize it. We would stick it on a virtual server with 50, 100 applications, for example. Does the company have the needed technical expertise? So small companies, a lot of times when I worked as an IT staff in a small company, I was the IT staff. I didn't know everything about everything. That meant I needed to go out and find resources and consult with people who had the expertise that I didn't. Me learning it would take longer than hiring an expert. And a lot of times businesses don't have time for you to learn, but they have the resources for you to hire. So keep that in mind. Is there going to be a prototype? Will it integrate with the company's current information systems? Are we implementing a system that's going to play with the existing database? Is it going to create an independent database? Those are all things that must be added. So a lot of times when we're talking about IT systems, we have to first focus on where is the system going to live? Do we have the processing power? Do we have enough memory? Is there enough hardware, software? Is there enough bandwidth within our organization to make the project viable, to make it reliable, to make it perform as it's intended to perform? So do expectations and performance specifications exist? This is the idea where, maybe top management says, hey, at the end of every day, we need to be able to produce these reports based on our daily activity or weekly activity. And we need to do that within 10 minutes. We can't wait overnight. We have to make decisions on what our business does tomorrow based on our performance today. So that's where technology used to be. We waited till the month end. We got the month end report and everybody, held their breath until we found out if we made money. Today, we want to know when we're making money this hour, sometimes this minute, what kind of things went on to impact our productivity, etc. And then, of course, handling future transaction volume and company growth. We need to build systems that are scalable. A great example of that would be If you've ever seen the Facebook movie, they originally designed Facebook to be used on one college campus. And then other college campuses wanted it, and their whole structure of Facebook had to change. It needed to be scalable. And now look at Facebook and the data centers all over the world. Certain data centers hosting what information? The information that sits closest to the people that are using it. For example, it would make perfect sense that all of the Facebook accounts for folks in Central Oregon are housed in Prineville, primarily. Then they're backed up someplace else in case something happens to the Prineville data center. So feasibility, so what are the costs? What is the cost of people? Well, one of the great things about IT right now is last year it was estimated that IT salaries went up 12% in 12 months, folks. There is a demand for IT again. There's a demand again, economically. When the economy's good, we're looking to invest in technology, we're looking to save money, we're looking to increase performance. So the economy is good. People are looking for IT staff who have the skills to do that. What's the cost of software? Are we going to develop it in-house? Do we have the skills and the people to develop it in-house? Or are we going to need to go out of our company? Are we going to hire a company to build it? Are there existing systems that companies are already building that we might be able to use in portions of our business, say, that don't provide that competitive advantage in how we do what we do better than our competitors? So cost of formal and informal training, peer-to-peer support, cost of licensing and fees, cost of consulting, all of this stuff. Cost of maintaining, folks. Keep that in mind. When we put a new system in, we're gonna find bugs. That means we have to maintain it. People are gonna come and say, hey, if this system would only do this, it would make my job easier. Or if this system did that, we might be able to do this for our customers. There's just a plethora of things to consider. Facility costs. Are we, example, are we running 10 servers in our location, or are those 10 servers being powered and hosted by a hosting company? What's the difference? Which is the better way to go? Who has the better bandwidth? Who has the better security, folks? Think about that today. How many of the local IT folks that are working for small companies really understand security? A lot of people say, well, if it's in my network, it's more secure. Well, not if that person's not updating the firewall and managing hits and seeing who's trying to break in. It's not. Whereas with a large company in a data center, they have people that are dedicated to see who's trying to get in, how they're getting in, what ports they're scanning, etc. So we talked a little bit about tangible and intangible benefits. Tangible are easy. They tend to be factual. So how does the system, what is it going to cost? How, what's our hourly wage for this employee on this project? Those are things we know. Those are things that we can tangibly figure out through fact. And then there's the idea of intangible. Is the system going to be more user-friendly? What does that mean, user-friendly? Well, it may mean it's easier for people to learn. It's easier for people to operate. It's easier for people to do their job. Can we get better data and information? Is the new website going to enhance the image of the company? Because we used to not talk about all of the philanthropy we used to do as a company. We didn't talk about on our website how our employees are engaged in the community and they're volunteering and stuff like that. And by getting that information out, it's, you could easily make a clean argument that people who are involved in their community are going to want to do business with us because we're involved in our community. And we see that a lot. And be assured, if it wasn't for the fact that that had an impact on businesses, do you think businesses would spend money, invest time, allow their employees to take paid time off to do volunteer work? Probably not. So schedule feasibility, that time again, right? Back to time. Do we have the time? Do we have the resources? Are the resources currently engaged in other projects that are going to keep them from doing this project? Are there risks involved? All things that need to be considered. So hopefully what you're learning is that the feasibility of doing a project is not just based on do we have enough money, do we have the right people, and do we have the time. Those are key elements. But we have to look at the whole big picture, and we need to document what we find. That way we can compare this project with that project and be doing it on an unbiased basis as to what project should be done first. So identify, weed out system requests that are not feasible. It doesn't mean, by the way, they go in the round file. It means that we just put them on hold. We may find out that what was once an idea or a system request that we can't do today, we suddenly cannot live without doing it tomorrow. So feasibility, it might not be necessary. Yes, we get a bunch of users that say, well, if only I had this report, it would make my job easier. Versus, well, if we produce this report over here, 5 people can use it, and it impacts 5 people's jobs in a positive way. So feasibility can be resubmitted as new hardware, software, you name it. So we can always pull those ideas out, we can modify them, and we can turn around and do them. So will it reduce cost? Will it increase revenue? Will it decrease expenses? Will it increase productivity? Will it increase quality? That's one of those projects that we do a lot, is that quality project. How is it that we can produce better products, better quality, not have a defect rate? All of those things come into play. Will the system serve customers better? Will it serve internal customers, employees better? Human resources might come to us and say, hey, we want to put in this new human resource system. It's going to allow our employees to manage their own healthcare costs, figure out where they want to spend money that we give them on life insurance, on long-term care, those kind of things. It's going to allow us to better manage, to see what our employees want, giving them more of what they want versus more of what we think they need. So priority, discretionary projects. So these are projects where management has a choice. Discretionary means at our discretion. So we have a choice between projects A, B, C, D, E, and F, and which one we do. Create a new report for a user as an example. Well, yeah, we can do that today, or if we have time, we could do it next week. Non-discretionary are those projects that we're required to do. So these could be, those by federal law, by state law, annual updates to tax information, quarterly changes, pay taxes, for example, keep better records of our taxes so we're paying them correctly. Those are all things that we just simply have to do as we conduct business. We do need to interact. We've talked about this already. I'm not going to spend much time, but we got to meet with key managers. These might be managers of departments in which we're putting in the software, users, IT staff. How does it all play together? We certainly don't want to create more work for IT staff by putting in a project that isn't feasible, by putting in a project that is not going to benefit the company, or that's constantly down. So my example of the agency management software, that software created way more work for me than was expected because I was constantly having to back it up, do updates to it, go back to the company, tell them what broke from what they were supposed to fix, those kind of things. And the same thing holds true definitely with production users. We don't want to put IT systems in that make their job more difficult, more time consuming. They're simply not going to do it. And if they're not going to do it, then we're going to get garbage out of the system because garbage was put into the system. So we focus on improvements and enhancements. Never like to use the word problem. It's a challenge. We have a new challenge. How do we solve the challenge? It's just a little bit more positive way of saying, hey folks, we have a problem and we've got to solve it. So what's the challenge or opportunity? See how challenge sounds like an opportunity? There's benefits, there's cost. What is the scope? What are the constraints? Constraints a lot of times are human constraints. Do we have the right people, or are we going to have to go out and find the right people? So as we investigate an issue, we've got to understand the opportunity or the problem. We've got to define the scope. What are the constraints? We've got to do that fact-finding information. Who's involved? How are they involved? How is it going to impact them? What is it we need to do? How much time do we have, etc. So we look at cost, we look at benefit, we look at our schedules. If we know that for the next 3 months we have a large project and we're going to produce a ton of product out the door to meet, a large order, we may not have the feasibility at that time or the staff availability to do a project. So operational feasibility, technical, economic feasibility. A lot of times, folks, there's a lot of great projects we want to do. We just don't have the money to do them. So here's some detail. I'm just going to sit on this. You can pause this and read through it, understand the problem or opportunity. One of the ways we can do this, is through like fishbone charting here. So again, this is a great fishbone example where we can look at challenges. We can, put projects. We can figure out, what the keys are to success, what the key challenges are to failure, those kind of things. So project scope and constraints, go ahead and pause this and read on it. A little bit more on scope and constraints. External, future, present, internal challenges. Perform that fact finding, so gather the data. I'll just pause on this. I want you to read it. We need to analyze data that we have in existence today. It might be the existing performance, say, of a server. We might have a baseline of the existing server, and we can calculate what the new server would be able to do. Then we look at the cost. Then we look at the benefit. Then we analyze how long the server would be in place, and finally decide if it's a project to do in replacing a server. So we can conduct interviews. That's great fact finding. It is time consuming. It can be costly, but we want to get the facts from the experts, and a lot of times those are end users. So fact finding, review documentation. I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but a great example of fact finding. Here's someone who's clearly monitoring some processes. Anytime we monitor a process, typically workers are going to speed up. They're worried about their job. So as you're sitting there with the stopwatch, seeing how long it takes them to box an item, they're going to box it faster while you're standing there than they do on a normal basis. So this is the idea of the Hawthorne effect, and I would just have you go out and do a little research on the Hawthorne study. And what you find is no matter what they did to these people, whether they made it colder or hotter or lighter or darker, it didn't matter. Productivity just seemed to increase, and they didn't understand why. When the fact was, the key for productivity was people were watching them, people were caring about them, people were focused on them, and they did a better job because of it. So it's this idea of management by walking around, getting to know the people you're managing. What are they doing? Jumping in and helping as a manager if something gets behind. So we can observe operations for sure. We can pull the existing data off of a system. We can analyze the data. We can use charting again, XY axis to identify there's a correlation of some variables that we see. So here's some examples. Look, we're going out to Excel here, folks. Putting data in Excel, building Pareto charts, doing all these things to figure out, is there some sort of direct correlation? Network response time, okay? Depending on the number of users, look what happens as the users go up, the response times, may go up. Analyze project usability, cost, benefit, the schedule. It all needs to be done based on a feasibility so that we can go back to management and say, here's what we should do. Here's 3 projects. Here's the one that we should do. Here are the alternatives and why they wouldn't work or why this one's better. So operational feasibility, technical feasibility, again, economic feasibility. Just because something can be done doesn't mean we have the money to do it or the time to do it. Because anytime we're taking time away from something else, it's going to be impacted as well. And then, of course, the schedule. And then finally, step 6, well, we present those results and recommendations to management. We do this via the business case. The business case defines all of the information we found. It defines that who, what, where, when, how, and why. So the business case covers all those things. It'll give a recommendation for case of action. And remember, the case of action can be that we take no action, that we just sit on it for a while. We have got too many other projects going on. We would need to hire these people to do this, or we would need to outsource. And right now our project manager just doesn't have time to take on another project. Maybe we hire another project manager. Who knows what the case may be. It'll discuss the benefits, the roles of the people involved, what's required. And of course, the introduction is a case for the business case itself. So that's it for Chapter 2. I hope you guys have a great week.